Got about 40 minutes before we wrap up the program today. We'll call it 38 to be more accurate. Want to thank you for joining me, Bill Colley, on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. And I mentioned General Michael Flynn a moment ago. If you're a frequent watcher of Fox News as I am, look, I'm not saying that I'm one of those Fox News zombies. It's just that I want to throw a shoe at the television when I'm watching MSDNC or CNN. And since I'm a news junkie, and I also have a very expensive TV set, I don't find I have nearly the reaction when I'm watching Fox. And I was watching Fox yesterday when suddenly there was a guest on. He's frequently on CNN Situation Room. He's U.S. Senator Jim Risch from here in Idaho. He popped up on Cavuto's program yesterday, and I want to share a little bit of what he had to say with you in just a moment. But a quick note, I was telling one of my coworkers today, it doesn't look like we're going to be into any really warmer weather anytime soon. We're sort of in the doldrums period here now where our temperatures are going to be better than they have been, but we're not going to see any, 60-degree days, which would be nice to have a breakout one or two. I suppose, though, if you're worried about water issues and the thaw, that's a good thing. But we're going to have the cold overnights sticking with us for quite some time. And if you're having problems heating your home, you need to call the pros at Ramsey Heating and Electric in Burley. Ramsey will have its folks come out and get the job done right, and get the job done right the first time. Problem-free, cozy winters are found at Ramsey Heating and Electric. And keep in mind, as we do get into the warmer months, they can help you with cooling, too. Located at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley, the telephone number is 678-0459. Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they sell warm winters and cool summers. I also have to tell you that somebody over there at the store is also doing the diet along with me. I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. My weight loss continues as of yesterday, and the goal now is to head for 70. I might reach 70, a loss of 70 pounds next week. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. 924, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. And we're at 27. So Jim Risch, U.S. Senator from here in Idaho, was appearing yesterday with Neil Cavuto on Fox, and they were talking about the departure of General Michael Flynn from the Trump administration, which starting to look like there's some sort of a flim-flam that was going on here and a legitimate attack to undermine Flynn. But according to Senator Risch, politics is exclusively driving the Flynn issue.
There's a real cauldron of hate and anger and frustration on the part of the Democrats who didn't expect to lose the presidency, and they're struggling with it. And anytime anything comes up, they'll make a big deal out of it. Don't get me wrong; what we're dealing with here is a big deal. On the Intelligence Committee, we've dealt with thousands of issues while I've been on there, and we will deal with this one. Our job is oversight for intelligence and counterintelligence things that happen, and we will exercise our oversight on the committee.
Cavuto, who, did I ever share the story? Cavuto and my sister went to the same college. Same time, too. I don't think that they knew each other well, even though there were only about 2,000 students on the campus at the time. But Cavuto was curious, though, thinking that perhaps the leak that took place identifying General Flynn in this scandal was a little more than what we usually see in Washington. But Risch was quick to say, no, unfortunately, leaking is a serious problem always in Washington.
Leakage has been going on here in Washington, D.C. for a long, long time. When I first joined the Intelligence Committee years and years ago, I was stunned at the amount of material that came out. Now, there's lots and lots that does not get out, but there shouldn't be any that gets out.
But it has increased, right, Senator? So now what's weird is I know Republicans are upset about these leaks. Didn't seem too upset during the campaign about leaks that came out that embarrassed Hillary Clinton. Now, quite conversely and fairly, Democrats were aghast at the leaks back then. Now they don't really care. So is this all just political nonsense?
Some is, but again, I would disagree that the quantity has changed. It really hasn't. Again, it's a small amount of information compared to the amount of classified information that's there.
U.S. Senator Jim Risch appearing yesterday on Fox News Channel in the afternoon with Neil Cavuto on his program, talking about the departure of General Flynn and the leaks that identified Flynn. Now, We're learning a lot more about this in the last couple of days. Flynn says, by the way, I did nothing illegal in my discussion with the Russians. And it may well be that that is true. Now, he got in trouble because apparently he wasn't wholly forthcoming to the vice president. And you embarrass the vice president, you end up by also association embarrassing the president, and that's why he ended up going. But Charles Krauthammer, appearing a little bit later in the day on the very same network, Fox News Channel, offered his thoughts on this. And he said, yes, Flynn made a mistake, but there's something more sinister going on.
There are two stories. One is the internal dysfunction in the Trump White House, the fact that Flynn lied internally, was untrustworthy. But the other story is the scandal of these leaks. Look, we cannot have our intelligence agencies eavesdropping on Americans and releasing it to the press. We have extremely elaborate procedures when we eavesdrop on, say, ambassadors from other countries, which we do all the time. Everyone does. Everyone knows it. That when the conversation involves an American, there are extremely strict procedures to blur the identity, to hide the identity, and to protect the information coming from the American.
Now, during the course of the overnight, a lot of you may have missed this, but this appeared in the Washington Free Beacon, which is an investigative conservative organization in Washington. And the writer says former campaign officials, Obama officials as well, they are loyalists in the Democrat Party, fellow travelers, waged a secret campaign to oust Flynn. And this goes back to when Flynn first objected during the Obama years to a nuclear deal with Iran. And then he was fired at the time by the Obama White House. The effort said to include former Obama administration advisor Ben Rhodes, the architect of a separate White House effort to create what he described as a pro-Iran echo chamber, included a small task force of Obama loyalists who deluged media outlets with stories aimed at eroding Flynn, multiple sources revealed. The operation primarily focused on discrediting Flynn, an opponent of the nuclear deal with Iran, in order to handicap the Trump administration's efforts to disclose secret details of the nuclear deal with Iran that had long been hidden by the Obama White House. Insiders familiar with the anti-Flynn campaign told the Free Beacon that these Obama hacks plotted in the months before Trump's inauguration to establish a set of roadblocks before Trump's national security team. In other words, the problem here isn't Flynn working with the Russians. The problem is the fellow travelers and Mr. Obama and his team still working with Iran, which, as you know, is no friend of the United States. More on this on the way in just a couple of minutes on News Radio 1310 KLIX. He had another commitment this week, so we will not be seeing our friend Kelton Hatch from Idaho Fish and Game until next week. But he did want me to pass along some details on an event. As you know, we have a lot of people who call the program and say, why did Fish and Game do this? Generally referring to something that happens, changes in policy, plans, and the like. And yet they'll hold these informational meetings to get input from the public, and people don't like to show up. So tonight, there's going to be some potential changes to Idaho big game season. And if you have input, you are invited to come to the Jerome Regional Office. That's at that's today, 15th of February, the Magic Valley Regional Office at 324 South 417 East Highway Business Park, 2.5 miles north of the Flying J in Jerome. You go up 93. It's near the State Police Barracks, too. It's just a right turn if you're going from Twin Falls up 93. But that's taking place tonight. And they would like your input. And there'll be a meeting, I guess, tomorrow as well in the Wood River Valley at the Haley Community Campus. That'll take place at 6 p.m. Both meetings, I think, are starting at 6 p.m. But the one is taking place tonight in Jerome. If you have an interest, there's your opportunity. So later on, you can't complain. You've already had your input. You'll get your input tonight, and you could help set the seasons. 9:35, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We have a caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air.
Yeah, a couple quick things. I'm very concerned that Flynn quit when he really didn't need to. I know it was an embarrassment, but when he quit, he admitted guilt. And,
He
I just,
admitted guilt in not being truthful with his bosses, perhaps, about conversation, but he didn't admit that anything illegal took place in his phone conversation.
right. And so compared to, the former candidate for president, Hillary, of course, the left always does this. And for some reason, we always cower down and act like we're sorry and we're going to repent and we're going to never do it again. And they slap the living hell out of us and we let them. It's such a crock. And then, of course, these leaks. I can't imagine that the Trump White House, like, Krauthammer said, was in dysfunction. I don't believe that for a minute, unless he's got people in intelligence that are sabotaging him, which must be the case. I can't imagine that if there was leaks going on that are creating so much havoc that Donald Trump would say, listen, we're going to get this squared away come hell or high water, and we're going to get rid of this BS. I don't know. I'll hang up. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you for the call. Well, Krauthammer, along with George Will and a number of these other prominent Washington conservatives, were never, ever behind Mr. Trump. They wanted their usual boilerplate Republicans, and Trump is a populist if he's not a conservative, although looking at his government, it might be the most conservative cabinet in the history of the United States. It's not about Flynn. They took out Flynn because the goal is to eventually take out Trump. That's what the liberals are doing in this country. This is just step one. This is what they're going to try. This is what they're working on because they can't win at the ballot box. 937. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. And now the media, unfortunately, still is fixated on Russia as being some sort of enemy. Yesterday afternoon, there's a Russian spy ship off the coast of Delaware. Well, I spent 7 years there. There's nothing there that they're going to hear other than some talk about, commercial fishing and also sport fishing, if they're dropping any listening devices around there, because they were out near what's called the Baltimore Canyon, where a lot of your fishing boats are located. Now, if they have sophisticated equipment, they can listen across the peninsula and the Chesapeake Bay and maybe pick up some things from Washington. Who knows? But finally, at one point, I'm watching one of these reporters do the breathless update, and the anchor says, well, does this ever happen where we do it? He says, we do it to them all the time. So you're telling me that occasionally they sail a ship over here, and they sail up and down international waters, and they listen in on what's going on here. We do it to them. We're doing it every day. And then, but they buzzed one of our Navy ships last week. Well, yeah, because it was sitting off their coast. They're trying to figure out what we're up to, and it's part of the game. Cat and mouse. It just keeps going on and on and on. And yes, but the spy ship had surface-to-air missiles. Well, when you're floating your military ships around on the ocean, you do try to defend yourself if someone comes along and tries to shoot you out of the water. We do it too. The real enemies here that we're dealing with are Iran, who the media and the Obama White House both said is going to be our friend, despite the fact they keep shouting death to America and death to Israel. Number two, North Korea. The North Korean leader just had his brother killed yesterday or earlier this week. That's a problem. China's a bigger problem than Russia. Russia is trying to stamp out ISIS, which is another one of our enemies. Again, when are we going to get our priorities straight on all of this? And we're letting the Democrats and their fellow travelers and media dictate to us what we should think and how our government should react. They fear Trump because of what he represents. I read today that his office has already cut in 26 days, I believe it is, nearly $3 billion in regulations and red tape. That's a lot. This is what they fear, is he will take the power away from unelected bureaucrats and he'll change the country. And that has them, they will stop at nothing to bring the man down. 20 minutes away from 10 o'clock. It's 28. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX. More on this coming up in just a moment at NewsRadio1310.com. We're down to the stretch run of the program. Just a couple of quick notes. Telephone number to reach us, 736-0300, 736-0300. I've lost more weight. At my next weigh-in, I should be down probably in the neighborhood of 70 pounds. How am I doing this in such a short and spectacular fashion? I'm doing it through the total body transformation system, which is a healthy way to lose weight. It'll keep you healthy during the course of the diet. It's not a fad diet. It's not a yo-yo diet. Developed by a company that's been in business almost 25 years now and has an A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau, backed up by scientific researchers from universities such as Cornell, Columbia, and Tufts. And also, I wanted to mention it'll burn 6 times more fat, scientifically proven, 6 times more fat, and you'll lose 8 times more weight than normal results from diet and exercise alone. And the meal replacement plan is healthier than most of the meals you would be eating. Also, you can still have a healthy amount of calories. I did some research on this. I like pizza. Never met a pizza I didn't like. And I did some research on this and discovered that, I started looking up the various brands. If I do the diet correctly during the day, I can sometimes have half a pizza for dinner at night. Now, I don't sit down and eat half a pizza very much. Generally, I have a sensible dinner, as Tommy Lasorda used to say, but that was a different program. This is better. This one is scientifically proven to work well with you and keep you healthy during the course of the diet. The average person will drop 22 pounds and lose 4 inches off a waist in just 60 days. And I should point out that the ingredients are all natural, and they'll help you with your appetite control as well and increase your metabolic fat burning, and you'll have a natural boost of energy. That was the one thing I noticed within the first week I was doing this in late September, is how alert I suddenly felt, backed up with an unconditional money-back guarantee. And also, if you'd like to know more, Don Chandler, he's the marketing executive here locally. Don has himself lost over 50 pounds with the Total Body Transformation System. Give him a telephone call. Of course, he's at area code 208-731-3560. Once more, that's Don Chandler. He's at 731-3560. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com, talking about this situation with General Flynn. Now, a lot of people, even among Republicans and conservatives, find him to be insufferable. The Democrats certainly did, and he supposedly is a registered Democrat. So maybe he wasn't the right guy for the job. But what was going on? Who was spying on General Flynn? As Krauthammer said, you're not supposed to spy on Americans. You're not supposed to release their names. Somebody did, somewhere in Washington. In an interview with the Daily Caller News Foundation, conducted hours before his resignation, Flynn himself argued, quote, "You call them leaks. It's a criminal act. This is a crime. It's not just a wink and a nod. One has to wonder, are they coming out of people in the National Security Council? Are they coming out of people in the intel community or state or defense?" Unquote. Now, we have a shadow government, apparently, that's working in Washington. That's a very dangerous thing. As I said earlier, it's bureaucrats. It's fellow travelers. It's people who are trying to thwart a legally elected president of the United States. Meanwhile, the Daily Caller has this. The New York Times published a story Tuesday night claiming that there was contact between associates of Donald Trump and the Russian intelligence official, or office, we should say, during the presidential race. Despite the bombshell headline, the writer at the Daily Caller says, the story includes several caveats. In other words, well, yeah, we're telling you this because we don't like Donald Trump. However, the Times reporters wrote that intelligence officials have found no evidence of cooperation between the Trump campaign and the Kremlin, and that it, quote, is not clear whether the intercepted communications had anything to do with Mr. Trump's campaign or Mr. Trump himself, unquote. Oh, so in other words, there's nothing to see here. Then why the headline? There was a writer at Newsweek, which is not, I stress, not a conservative publication, who said today the Times is simply out to get Donald Trump because they don't like Donald Trump. The editors don't like him. The reporters don't like him. The columnists don't like him. Who knows? Maybe even the delivery drivers don't like him. So they'll do whatever they can. They have joined this shadow government. These are treasonous, traitorous people. 9:45 now on Top Story with Bill Colley. Also, I mentioned a couple of other quick things. Even the Washington Post, something called the Power Post, which I guess is a particular section of that newspaper, says the FBI needs to explain why Flynn was recorded. All of these things need to come out, and we need to start exposing the riffraff on the American left that is colluding along with George Soros and along with certain nefarious people inside the United Nations not just our own bureaucrats, unelected bureaucrats, but this cabal that is working to undermine the will of the American people. Meanwhile, media says it hasn't been tough enough on Donald Trump. I mentioned the Washington Free Beacon. I came along this video that the Washington Free Beacon put together. Media claims that it's not tough enough on Donald Trump. Yeah, this is the media being tough on Mr. Obama. This is about 2 minutes long. Take a listen.
I got the Christmas Eve excitement brewing right here at Hardball because tomorrow night at precisely this time, 7 o'clock Eastern, the President of the United States is going to join us here on Hardball.
People in the mainstream media have been accused of being afraid to speak truth to power, and I've got some truth to power. Your dog looks like he's out of control.
A lot of parallels have been offered between yourself and John F. Kennedy, who also made history, came in with a young, attractive family, had a lot of big Harvard brains around him.
When was the first moment that it began to sink in that you were president of the United States?
I ask you about it. Any time in this campaign, did you have a chuckle that you just couldn't get rid of? Something weird that happened. It was so crazy that you just went to bed laughing about.
How confident are you that your plan is going to work, and how do you avoid the dangers of being too cocky?
You've racked up a lot of wins in the last few weeks that a lot of people thought would be difficult to come by. Are you ready to call yourself the comeback kid?
You know, you are the equivalent of a rock star in politics.
Do you feel sometimes like your administration is not given the credit it deserves?
Where do you get all this confidence?
How does this feel of all the honors that have come your way?
During these first 100 days, what has surprised you the most about this office, enchanted you the most about serving in this office?
Christy and I go back away.
I've never seen you lose. I wasn't looking that one time.
There you go. Finally, this is a political question you want to duck, but how does your golf game hold up next to Tiger's?
Golf. What does it do for you?
You think Utah, which finished undefeated by defeating Alabama, has as good a claim as either of those schools to be the national champion?
How do you handle the controversy, the negativity? Why be president? Are you a masochist?
And business gets done on this walk.
Yes, exactly. And what do you think Republicans will be sipping and saying next year?
Yeah. I said it in my newspaper column. What was it? Last week? I think I said it. It might have been this week. I write so many of them any longer, I get confused. But I said something along the lines of media just simply wanted to birth his babies. I had to clean that up because, you know, their knees are all dirty. So I had to come up with some sort of a euphemism that might perhaps better inform people about how media treated Barack Hussein Obama. And to sit here and claim that they were not biased in coverage during his 8 years in the White House, how dang dumb do they think we are? Or are they that stupid they don't think that we notice what's going on? 10 minutes away from 10 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 28. We have a caller looking to join us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air.
Well, the New York Times has been leading the destruction of this country for decades. And so anything they say just basically should be ignored. And I had dinner with a Vietnam War veteran, and his group, he was wounded, and there was only 3 that actually survived. But the New York Times led the anti-Vietnam War drum, along with the Washington Post. There was a book called All the News That Fits by Herman Dinsmore. I challenge people to look that up. Herman Dinsmore, All the News That Fits, pointing out that the war correspondents for the Times was pointing out that we're actually winning over there, and the New York Times was telling that our soldiers were just killing women and children, and so when our vets came home, they were booed, they were spit upon. It was amazing. In fact, one guy re-enlisted because his hometown treated him so badly. But the New York Times is leading the effort to destroy this country. So anything they say, you have to keep that in mind.
Thank you much for the call. Again, do we have other callers too as well? I'd welcome those voices for a little variety. 736-0300, 736-0300. I did mention, and this is always a little dicey. Tomorrow morning, we expect to be joined by Congressman Raul Labrador on the air for his monthly visit. But some days, because of his schedule, we have to shift things around or reschedule. He is quoted today in the Daily Signal. Conservative legislators say emerging liberal protest movement is no Tea Party. Now, over in liberal media land, they like to tell you it is. First of all, they poo-pooed the Tea Party for years and said it wouldn't last. They called it AstroTurf, even though we were collecting money. People were dumping money in coffee cans to pay for the rental of the firehouses that we were holding meetings at on a monthly or weekly basis. Bases, I guess, would be the better way to put that. And yet, now they're trying to tell us that the George Soros-funded resistance, they're calling it the resistance, as if, gee, they're like French resistance fighters. Hardly. You think any of these people would risk their lives like those folks did? The protesters, some organized by liberal outside groups, have not been shy about equating their rise and potential impact to the Tea Party. Here's a quote from Congressman Labrador. The reality is that there are some similarities between these groups and the Tea Party, but there are some pretty significant differences as well. The biggest difference is you had a large group of people that organically got together 8 years ago, and they were complaining not just about the Obama administration. Their biggest rags were about their own party. The Tea Party was upset with Republicans as much, if not more, than with Democrats. This was people who were upset with Republican members of Congress because they voted for things that they thought had gone against the principles they espoused in their campaigns. And I was reading that as well, not just Congressman Labrador, but a writer by the name of Adam Brandon at the Washington Times says the Tea Party was more impactful than the recent protests will ever be because it originated organically with grassroots Americans. The main officials with the Tea Party revolted against, remember, were Republicans, that writer says. So that's not just Congressman Labrador, that's a writer at another newspaper saying that indeed that's the truth. So this is not a movement that's going to last. As soon as somebody, throws them a new hacky sack, they'll be off occupied with that. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story at 9:53.
Good morning, Bill. The more they try to make things up for Trump, when Obama was in there, I think the hardest question they asked him is, "What's your favorite color?" And then one guy they asked a couple of hard questions and he got mad, so they just quit doing it. But I'll tell you what, if these Republicans don't get behind us voters that did what we did, we're not going away, and they're next to go, and they better remember that. They better get behind Trump instead of just seeing which way the wind blows, and they're just going to form that way. But the movement's not stopping, and it's just going to continue on, and I hope they see that. I really do. Thank you.
I do too, and the effort to try to remove Trump, if it starts involving some of the Republicans in the establishment, I would only say beware. Remember Kelly Ayotte. She was a senator from New Hampshire. And then when Trump made his comments, his joke about groping to Billy Bush on a bus, remember that was in 2005, but the video came out. Kelly Ayotte, there was another fellow in Nevada. They both came out and said, oh, we are so pure as the driven snow as your Republican senators or Senate candidates. We would never approve of that. We therefore ask Mr. Trump to resign from the campaign and allow people to vote for Mike Pence. Well, that fellow in Nevada and Kelly Ayotte, they both lost. Voters looked at them and said, "You scoundrels. You're not walking on water. You're a sinner like everybody else. Shut up." And they lost their elections. Any Republicans now who think they're going to jump on board to please the fellow travelers in media, and they will be doing that. They're seeing which way the wind is blowing right now. They will be doing that. They're going to pay a heavy price the next round at the ballot box. Do not forget that. Those of us in the talk radio business will never allow that to be forgotten if that happens. One other quick note today about liberals and how they're basically double talkers. I read the other day, you've already heard this story probably several times if you listen to a lot of talk radio. The wackos who've been demonstrating the pipeline project in North Dakota have left behind over 250 truckloads of garbage. We're for the land, except when we're throwing our empty beer cans down. That and their clove cigarette, wrappers and everything else they leave behind. Well, 250 truckloads of garbage. The reservation, the local tribe, is going to have to pay for some of the removal too as well, and it's strapped already for cash. Number two, I heard yesterday, the state of North Dakota, that has now cost them $33 million, that's taxpayer money, to wet nurse these people who are out there camping in the middle of nowhere in this demonstration. And this is the latest today. This comes from sayanythingblog.com. People are leaving behind, the liberals are leaving behind abandoned cars, hundreds of them, hundreds. With the spring thaw expected, it's been a very snowy winter in that part of the country as well. With the spring thaw coming, a lot of these automobiles will then be flooded. And automobiles have various fluids inside the engines that will then contaminate the water, and these people have been claiming all along that they're to protect the water. How do you get rid of this mess? North Dakota law says you have to, before you can impound an automobile, you have to give 90 days notice before you can pick up the automobile and dispose of it. So here we are in the middle of February, so middle of March, April, May. Yeah, there will definitely be a thaw before that happens. Rob Port, the author of this blog, says spring weather is looming and the melt-off of the heavy snows is likely going to flood the area of the camps. He says, where are the celebrities now? Where are the professional activists? They created an almighty mess with the name of protecting the environment, and now they're not around to help clean it up. So this is not about the environment. It is not about the Russians. It is not about Donald Trump, ultimately. It is about liberal control. They managed to get the eyeballs of their fellow travelers and media focused on them, but their arguments really are just stalking horses so they can try and better take control of your life and your government. Very, very dangerous people. Bill Colley with you this morning. Rush Limbaugh coming up next following Top Story and Fox News at 10 o'clock. We'll have Sean Hannity after 1 o'clock news today, Glenn Beck after 4 o'clock news, Dave Ramsey, 7 until 10 tonight. And God willing, and the creek don't rise, they'll allow me to come back and do this all over again tomorrow morning between 8 and 10 o'clock right here at News Radio 1310 KLIX.